Hello, everybody out there in the universe listening to our podcast that we are really excited about, Home Comfort Tactics. I am Eric Gans, and I am with Kyle Farrell.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Kyle. Great to talk to you again this week. I know we both were out there doing a lot of things, but before we get to the interesting parts of the show, I just want to reiterate again what we're doing this for. We're out in people's homes, working in the home performance field. We're out there sealing houses, sealing attics, crawl spaces every day. We're doing energy audits out in houses. And what that means is that we're just looking at the house as a whole system, and we're kind of breaking down each part and evaluating each part and reporting back to the owner so that they are well informed and they can make good decisions. So what we're trying to do with our show is just bring some of these things that are recurring, that are happening in a lot of houses in Maryland, the same things, because guess what? All these houses are built relatively the same. So the same problems exist. And we just want to bring it out into the forefront so that people can kind of see what's going on and understand, and maybe they can take the information and go back and find, problems in their own house that will help them with their comfort and energy efficiency. So that is what we're here to do. I wanted to share that. I want to thank anybody out there, once again, who is listening. We appreciate it. And Kyle, you've been very patient. Thank you for letting me talk. I would like to know, what types of things do you want to talk about here in the beginning?
So I did first job with the trailer. Well, first big job.
Sweet.
I've done a couple other smaller size ones. So
right.
It's pretty interesting. We got a 36% reduction on overall airflow in the house with the blower door test, and then it's pretty challenging because it was hot out. So
yes,
by 12 or 1 o'clock, it was around 110, 120 degrees
in the attic.
Yeah, and I'm not fully used to it anymore like I once was. I mean, if I'm doing fans and stuff like that, it is a little easier.
Yeah,
right? It's not as hot. Yeah. I'm in there for a little bit to vent out, and then I hop right back into the house in the AC. So it was a challenge. It was good though. It was good. Yeah. I got some really cool video footage, and there was a lot to seal. As a ranch.
And I think, sorry, this is the one where you actually had the whole house fan in the vertical wall, which we talked about last week.
No.
No?
It definitely was 20. Yeah. So it was it's a full ranch, and then over top of an entire crawl space. It was JES, same JES.
Gotcha. Right.
They did a full encapsulation, and
so you finished off the attic.
Yep. Finished off the attic. There was no insulation up there, 3 inches of really, really spotty insulation. So definitely can use it.
Yeah.
Yep. It's neat.
Cool. So on that house, you got 36%.
36%. Yeah. And awesome to see too. So that's the one we did talk about. There was a duct that was in the crawl space that kind of pops up through the floor, but then connected at some point with a bulkhead in the kitchen. Older style houses have underneath or over top of the cabinets, they put the drywall down a little bit.
Right.
And that's just an open void that leads into the house. When I turn the blower door on in the original portion of the audit, when I did infrared, there was a ton of air coming from the main return, warm, hot air from the attic. So we sealed the entire bulkhead off. And then when I did the blower door again, nothing. She's going to see so much benefit from that.
Definitely.
She pretty much got the work for free as well, with JES's contract lumped in and their work done as well.
Got it.
So attic work for pretty much nothing. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Right. Because she had already invested without going through the program in the crawl space.
Right.
But we were able to sort of partner up with JES so that, because they don't really specialize in attics, and
Or
we're allowed
audits.
to
Yeah.
or audits. And so we revisit these homes where the crawl space has been done, and we are able to, within a reasonable amount of time, it can't be years after the crawl space is done. But
Yep.
as a side note, that also shows why this program is a friendly program for Maryland homeowners. They're wanting people to take advantage of these rebates because they will, you know, they will honor, rebates on projects that have already been done the right way
Yep.
in the past. And then, like you just said, to finish my thought, not to cut you off here, but by going through the program and getting the audit, then the additional rebates that she didn't get on the crawl space actually covered the cost of the attic. That's why it was. So it's not really free. I don't want, I not to,
Yeah. 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 She
I
paid a
mean,
lot into it, like a lot.
but for her, it's kind of free because she didn't really know the program existed. And until it was brought to her attention, then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So,
Right. Right.
so good, man. And that's all you
Yeah.
created that relationship. And that's a really great thing, man. I'm really excited and proud of you for that, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah. There's a snake in the crawl space too.
Ooh.
A huge snake, like a 6-foot snake.
Oh my God. See, no, I would not even.
Yeah, we found like 4 or 5 snake skins in the attic. That's from it's another thing that'll help us sealing everything. I mean, snakes can get into some pretty tight spots. Will help kind of keep them out.
So, couple things on that. One thing, and you remember Seth?
Yeah.
He told me this one, man. He's so smart. He was like, "Hey, air and insects, they take the same pathways. So if you seal up a house, then." But on a second note, I had early on, like when I first broke off and started doing this, I got a call from a guy in Colombia, and his house was so humid, and the whole basement was open. And, we sealed it all up, and he hasn't called back. But the point is that there was a snake living behind the insulation. So there were big holes down there, which is the reason why the house is so humid. So if you ever see a snake skin in your house in the basement, you pretty much know you got a hole somewhere and you need to close it up.
Right. Good call. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. So, yeah, dude, what else? Do you want to finish up? Did you have any other thoughts?
That's pretty much it. What do you got, Eric? What kind of cool things happened this week? Or
yeah, so all right, well, that kind of is like a good segue. We're gonna get into like the next part, which is the meat and bones of the show. And yeah, so for me, I've got something pretty cool brewing. And what I mean by that is I'm a former window contractor, so I did that for 9 years of my life. And I drank the Kool-Aid. Was all about windows. I visited the window manufacturing plants, and I did every possible thinking and thought process and studying about windows that I possibly could. So where's that going? Well, I've got an interesting situation where I did an energy audit last January. So January 22, not 23. So I should say not last January, the one before that. So January 2022. And the house has, I think, 16 windows. But anyway, I did the energy audit. It had really no insulation, no air sealing. The house was built in the 50s, late 50s. So anyway, we went out there, or the customer called me back the beginning of this year, 2023, so about a year later, and is ready to move forward with the insulation work. He wants to make sure he can also get his rebate on his windows because he's moved forward with his windows as well. So what that means is through this program, if somebody insulates and air seals their house, they'll also be eligible for rebates on windows and doors. Not in the other order. You have to do the insulation and air sealing first. And this whole thing that I'm explaining right now is going to speak to why. Because we did the air sealing and insulation before the windows came. And that was about 3 weeks ago. And then I decided, and I'm going to have to, this is a little bit of a tease because I don't know the end result yet, but I thought about it. I was like, you know what? We sealed the house. And I was going to go back and test out. So remember, we test a house in and then we test a house out. So we measure how leaky it is before we start, and then we measure how leaky it is after we finish. And in this case, we already sealed. We went out, we insulated and sealed the house. The windows are coming about 2 or 3 weeks after we did all the insulation work. I left the day we finished. I knew we did a great job, but I was like, let me go back. I thought about this when I got home. I was like, let me go back and just do a quick test between the time that we air sealed and insulated and the time that he gets his windows replaced so I can measure the results at 3 places: before any work, after air sealing and insulation, and then after windows, to compare, how well we did each time, or how well each measure, how well, I guess, both the two measures, the windows and doors and ceiling. I'm sorry. Let me start over.
You good?
We're going to figure out how well, or we're going to figure out the difference between how well the house is sealed with just air sealing and insulated versus the windows. So I guess what I'm really trying to say here, and making this really complicated, is I cannot wait, because I've done the test on the ceiling and the insulation, and we got a 49%. I think it was like 40, almost like 50% on the nose, 49.87% reduction. Yes. And his windows are coming, I think, this week. So I'm going to go back out and do the final test out, and I want to see how much these windows are actually sealing the house. And I don't think it's going to be much. So that's my thing. I think I did a terrible job there of explaining it, but I'm excited to see, because I am always telling people windows are not going to do it for you. They're not the reason for your problems, but most people, they think it's the windows.
They shoot right to it. Right to it. I feel like 50% of the audits that I go to, when I'm asking in the beginning, the 15 minutes, saying, hey, what kind of things are problematic in the house? Windows. They shoot right to windows almost every time.
Do you sometimes, it is, do you sometimes even get the feeling that people are like, look, I know you're going to tell me my windows are the problem. I already know that. Please, if this is going to be about my windows, I'm going to be, it's like,
I cut them off right there too. Not like cut them off, but let them explain to them, no, it's not.
Right. Yeah.
The attic is almost always the reason for leakage.
Yeah.
Almost always. And uncomfortable. And exterior walls sometimes, like older houses. Most of the time it's attic.
Yeah. For sure.
Huge drafts.
Cool. So anyway, I'll report back once I finish the final test out, and I'll really be able to sort of break it all down and kind of explain. But the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. We air sealed and insulated this house, and we got almost 50%. And I've got all the I'll put it into the video on YouTube, but it's,
I'm curious as like a whole from the start number too, like, because it wouldn't change. I mean, the leakage number is gonna be exactly what it is, even if it was replaced, before the insulation. I'm curious what that percentage is out of the whole, right? Like from the beginning when you did the blower door test.
Right. So in other words, if I run the blower door test after the windows are done, I'll be able to figure out what changed the windows, if any, have, what effect it has. Yeah. Anyway. Cool. So Kyle, what about you, man? I know you've been going on a lot of audits and stuff like that. So tell me what's something that's interesting that happened to you out in the field today.
I had a couple things, and I did 2 like Cape Cod style audits on Tuesday, and both of them had problems that I didn't think were addressable in a sense.
Really?
There was one where there was, a lower attic, like knee wall attic duct system, right? And the ducts ran through the slopes and into the top attic. Mm-hmm. And for that one, there were ducts blocking an entire cavity where there should be insulation, right? Mm-hmm. So for that's like such a huge problem, because we can't fit insulation in the cavity, right? Mm-hmm. And then you, not only that, but you have ductwork in the cavity, so it's like exposed to the heat that's pounding down on the roof line,
getting trapped in that small cavity.
Yeah, and they were saying that like the temperature was not good in the house whatsoever during the summertime. So due diligence, I think we could effectively encapsulate the lower attic and bring the ductwork down there into a conditioned space, and that would help. But have you ever ran into something like that, Eric?
I did, yeah, I did. And the way that I've thought about it, and this is one of the hard parts of the podcast, trying to, because this is where, I really want to help people by not by
Sure.
having them be able to visualize stuff. So I won't get
Right.
on to that, but the way that I think about stuff like that, when you can't get to a certain component that is
Sure.
important, it's all about, okay, well, what about the teammates around that run?
Sure. Yeah.
So if we can make the team around better, like you said earlier, if you encapsulate and
It'll
you
help a
make that
lot.
exactly,
And then bury the ductwork up top. That's what the general game plan was
right.
established there.
And that's like retrofitting 101 right there. It's like you
Right.
got to do what you can,
Right. And then well, with that was like best thing that we could do. And he was pretty cool with the explanation at the end of everything as well.
Yeah.
Then I had one more thing similar. Went to a house, Cape Cod style. I actually knew the guy, which was kind of cool. I went to a concert and met him with a friend's. He was a friend of my friend's brother. Small world. Baltimore's like that. Baltimore is
Yeah.
like that for sure. So we were doing infrared in the house, and I realized like all the issues were right at the slopes. And then a couple little things where the knee wall insulation wasn't lining up right.
Mhm.
And then the lower knee wall attics.
Mhm.
And for that, it's a finished space as well. If we dense pack, it'll block the airflow from the lower attic to the top attic. If we do if we do like any kind of insulation, really, it'll block the airflow. And
Oh,
for
for the
that,
HVAC?
there was no HVAC. There was no HVAC inside of the knee wall attics. It was just an open cellulose blown fiberglass on one side and then 2-inch foam board on the other side, which I thought was interesting. Getting like flip houses or houses people lived in, they tried different things to fix the problem because it was very, very uncomfortable up on the second floor as well.
Right.
They did block underneath of the floor cavities where the knee wall butts up against like the living space, right?
Right.
They
Right.
blocked that and they sealed it really, really well all the way down. Then they had Tyvek up on the side that was fiberglass batted, which I thought was different. I've never seen that before. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen that?
No, you
It
mean
was a
used as a
random
sheathing?
kind of, yeah. I guess just
No.
to hold it up.
I've not seen
So
Tabak now.
that was there, and then some of the 2-inch foam board on the opposing side was cut a little bit short. So just filling in the gaps and sealing everything would help. Would help a bunch. I
Gotcha.
let him know he was thinking about doing a refinish upstairs, putting drywall in because it was wood style paneling up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in the past, I had a friend that had a sunroom that had no insulation. It was built like onto a porch ultimately, and he wanted to get it comfortable so where he could like leave all the doors open to the sunroom and it would still be reasonable in there.
Uh-huh.
AC would kind of like get to it.
Gotcha.
So I thought about like 2-inch foam board, 2-inch foam board, and putting that up so
Mm-hmm.
that there's enough space where the lower attic will still breathe up into the top attic, and it'll have a high R value because it's closed cell. Closed cell is like seven an inch. We could still probably get it close to R30 with a
Gotcha.
6-inch void and still have that breathability for the top attic. It's very, very, very hot in the top attic.
I see.
So that was interesting. It's just like a challenging house that requires like special attention, I guess you could say. Special
So,
attention to try and figure out a good solution.
and both of them are Cape Cods, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with Cape Cods. It seems like sometimes you go in and it's just the whole thing is just open. It's a wide open
Right.
blank. And then other times you go in and it's just every time you look around for another opportunity to help,
Right.
the door gets closed, or it gets
Yep.
complicated, or it's like,
Yeah,
you
and you
got
want
a
to be
big
cost effective, and that's
cost effective.
like
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's sometimes, it's not even a possibility.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like you have
Yeah.
to go with, if you want it to be
Yeah.
100% fixed,
Yeah. You know
getting some
what?
heavy stuff.
Yeah. On my advice on that, if anybody out there in the world is listening and you're gonna think about buying a Cape Cod, is I think the tendency is that when people are looking to buy a house and they see the walls closed, they feel more comfortable.
Right.
But if you go upstairs in a Cape Cod, the bonus room with the knee wall and all that, and you see that you poke behind, it's all open and you see a lot of insulation, that's actually a good thing.
Right.
Because you're going to eventually, when you move in, realize that that space is hot or cold, and you're going to want to insulate. And if you can get to the areas, then you're going to be way better off. So
Definitely. Definitely.
cool. So, all right. Well, yeah, man, we've kind of run a little long here. So,
Okay.
no. I wanted to just finish up by saying, hey, let's talk a little bit. I mean, we've talked a little bit about what we do, but have you given any thought? I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but have you given any thought? Is there anything in the world of home performance that you think people should know about energy audits that are, I don't know, something that people might not know otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say pressure testing. I've been doing that more and more lately. I've been in a lot of older houses,
Right.
so I've been doing pressure testing on the duct system to make sure that, as like a secondary follow up, because I don't want to leave any doors open for
Right.
problems later on. I'd rather have
Right.
everything out in the open like right away, right?
Sure.
Where
Sure.
customer knows everything that's going on, they're aware of everything. So if there are problems, then it's right there. It's
Yeah.
right there. There's a reason. There's a reason for it. So I've been doing follow up. A lot of older houses, the ductwork is very, very challenging to because it's not ran right. It's not ran right. It was an older style of running the ductwork. Nothing sealed. They used all sheet metal for everything, so there's leaks at almost every single seam where the ducts connect together.
Yep.
So I'll do pressure testing at the higher floors to make sure that they're hitting that 1 CFM per each individual square foot reading. And if they're not, I let the customer know, hey, you're lacking in duct pressure here,
Which probably is a result
of the ductwork not being sealed. I've
exactly.
been like recommending, as like a follow up, we should always, and this is from this training class, right? I
Yeah.
did a training class to renew my BPI to the newer certifications,
Right.
and the training class went over manual J. So when we go and we re-insulate a house, and this is if you're going to replace a system ultimately after you do the insulation work,
Yeah.
or within a reasonable time frame of doing the insulation work, you should go and you should get a second manual J on the house
Yeah.
if there even was one to begin with,
Okay.
which
Yeah. Go ahead.
it'll tell you what size specific to the house. After air sealing is completed, they actually factor in what the leakage rate is of the house
Yeah.
and what the pressures are in the system,
Right.
and resize the system, and then also make other recommendations like AeroSeal, where it'll seal your whole system up, and then the pressure will be even throughout the entire house.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I went into the. Sorry, what were you going to say, Eric?
No, I was just gonna say, see, the takeaway for the layman, like the person who owns a home that
Right, right.
might not fully understand, is that a manual J is a mechanical calculation. It takes into
Sure.
consideration, the wind, the where the trees are, the sun, how
Yep,
many
everything.
windows. Yeah. And it sizes the HVAC because the size of an HVAC. So one question I was going to have for you is this. Now,
Sure.
oh, just to finish that. So the takeaway for the homeowner is, yeah, when you seal your house, you might not need as big of a unit or, as big of a
Sure.
system. But let me ask you this. This is something I always come across when I'm modeling out a house. And I know that, okay, I've got it. I've reduced the air leakage by 30% in this house. This is
Right.
totally attainable.
Right,
They're
right.
going to get their HVAC. But when you model out HVAC system for the rebates on that? Do you model? So if you look at the system and it's a 3.5 ton in your modeling, do you drop it down to 3 after you've put, or do you just let it, you keep everything the same?
Oh, I keep everything the same.
Me too.
Keep everything the same. Yeah.
But I kind of feel half guilty about that. I don't think it's ultimate. I mean, I don't think there's enough HVAC people, unless I'm wrong. I could be wrong, and maybe I am, but I don't think there's enough that really do a manual, like a correct one on the house. But I could be.
They usually outsource it. They usually outsource it to like outside companies. A lot of rating companies for Energy Star, like the company that I worked for to start, ESG.
Yeah,
they would do manual J's as like a portion of a ResNet rating, but also just to like do it to help people out because we were heavy into the audit portion of things.
Right.
Existing home retrofits, that's huge. They were, and I didn't even think about that when I was taking the class. This makes sense.
Yeah,
you should. If they sometimes you go into a house and it just replaced the system a year ago. So
right.
They can't run a second manual J afterwards. There's not really a point. You just have to just be cautious of things.
Yeah, you got to be cautious. And okay, well, cool. Well, that's a whole nother topic. But
definitely.
So yeah, for me, I think one thing that I think is kind of cool that not a lot of people know is that the water temperature coming out of your faucet needs to be 120 degrees. And a lot of times I go out and I use a little laser, which nowadays you can get on Amazon for like $20, I think. And I shoot the water once it hits the sink. And, a lot of times it's 135 or 140, or sometimes it's even 115. So 120 is good because it kills bacteria and it's also the most efficient. So try to get your water temperature to 120. And that's everything I think for this show. Is there anything else you wanted to finish up with, Kyle?
No.
All right. Well, if anybody out there is listening, we really appreciate it. And we're just going to keep trying to get better and bring you all as much good information as possible. If you do have any comments, if you have any suggestions, topics, anything, if ever, please email me, Eric at hometrustremodeling.com. Thanks for listening.